Dr. Kang Wu rubbed his tired eyes and looked at the computer screen for what felt like the 100th time that day. The numbers dancing across the display made no sense at all. According to every law of physics he had learned in 20 years of studying science, what he was seeing should be impossible, but there it was glowing softly on his monitor like a digital middle finger to everything humanity thought they knew about the universe. The small research station orbiting Mars was quiet. At this hour, most of the other scientists had gone to bed hours ago, leaving only the hum of life support systems and the distant rumble of the fusion reactors to keep him company. Wu had been working alone in Laboratory 7 for the past 3 days, trying to figure out why their latest experiment had failed so spectacularly. The project was supposed to be simple: create a more efficient fusion reactor that could power deep space missions without requiring massive fuel tanks. They had been testing a new magnetic containment system when something went very, very wrong. The magnetic fields had somehow created a feedback loop that should have destroyed the entire laboratory. Instead, something impossible happened. The test probe they were using had vanished. Not destroyed, not vaporized, not blown apart. It had simply ceased to exist in their laboratory and, according to the tracking systems, had reappeared 3 light-years away near the Proxima Centauri system. The journey had taken exactly 0.003 seconds. Wu stood up from his chair and walked to the small window overlooking the red surface of Mars below. His reflection stared back at him, a tired-looking man in his 40s with messy black hair and clothes that looked like he had been wearing them for days, which he had been. The discovery was too important to waste time on things like sleep or personal hygiene. The door to the laboratory slid open with a soft hiss, and Li Na walked in carrying 2 cups of coffee. She was his research assistant and one of the few people on the station who understood the work they were doing. Na was young, maybe 25, with bright eyes that always seemed to be asking questions. Her specialty was theoretical, physics, and she had a gift for seeing patterns that others missed. "Here, Dr. Kang," she said, handing him one of the cups. "You look like you need this more than I do." Na took one look at his face and knew something big had happened. "What did you find?" she asked, setting her cup down on the nearest table. Wu gestured toward the computer screen, showing her the data they had collected from the failed experiment. "We broke physics," he said simply. "The probe went from here to Proxima Centauri faster than light should be able to travel. Faster than anything should be able to travel." Na leaned forward, studying the numbers. Her eyes grew wider as she processed what she was seeing. "This is impossible," she whispered. "That's what I thought too," Wu replied. "But I have run the calculations 17 times. The results are always the same. Our magnetic containment system didn't just fail. It created some kind of space folding effect. The probe didn't travel through space, it made space bend around it. The implications hit Na like a physical blow. If this was real, if they could actually fold space, then everything would change. The galactic community had been using quantum tunnel drives for thousands of years, technology that required exotic matter and took weeks to travel between star systems. Humanity had been struggling to build their first quantum drive when this happened. But there was more. Wu pulled up another screen showing energy readings from the experiment. "Look at this," he said. "The power requirements were actually lower than our normal fusion tests. We used less energy to move something 3 light-years than it takes to heat the laboratory." Nay sank into a chair, her mind racing through possibilities. If the energy costs were that low, then this. Technology could be scaled up. Humanity could build ships that traveled anywhere in the galaxy instantly. They could explore every star system, discover new worlds, and expand across space faster than any species in history. "Wait," Na said suddenly, her voice filled with concern. "What about the Council?" The Galactic Council was the governing body that controlled most of known space. ancient civilizations that had been traveling between stars for millions of years. They maintained peace by carefully controlling which technologies each species could access. Young races like humanity were only allowed basic fusion drives and simple weapons. The Council said it was for everyone's safety to prevent dangerous species from gaining power too quickly. Wu nodded grimly. That's exactly what I'm worried about. The Council has very strict rules about faster-than-light travel. They monitor every species to make sure no one develops anything beyond approved limits. If they find out we have this technology... Didn't need to finish the sentence. Na knew the stories of what happened to species that broke Council regulations. Sometimes they were simply cut off from galactic trade and left to develop alone. Other times Council enforcement fleets would arrive to ensure compliance through more direct methods. But we can't just ignore this. Na said. This could change everything for humanity. We could explore the galaxy. We could find new worlds, new resources. We could finally take our place among the great civilizations instead of being treated like children. Wu walked back to his computer and pulled up star charts showing human territory. Humanity controlled maybe 50 star systems, a tiny fraction of the galaxy. Most were barely colonized and all were connected by slow transport ships that took months to travel between them. Meanwhile, species like the Vorthak Empire controlled thousands of systems with instant communication and rapid travel between worlds. The test probe was still out there, near Proxima Centauri, sending back data about the star system. It had survived the journey completely intact. Every system was working perfectly. The space folding effect had been gentle enough that even delicate scientific instruments were undamaged. Napari moved to another computer terminal and began running her own calculations. What if we could control the effect, she asked. What if we could fold space exactly where we wanted to send ships anywhere in the galaxy? The more she worked, the more excited. She became the mathematical model suggested that not only was controlled space folding possible, but it could be done with technology humanity already possessed. They wouldn't need exotic matter or dimensional crystals or any of the rare materials. That made Council FTL drives so expensive and difficult to build. All they needed was a better understanding of magnetic field manipulation and enough power to create the initial fold. Everything else could be built using resources from human space. Wu watched his assistant work and felt a mixture of excitement and terror. What they had discovered could make humanity the most powerful species in the galaxy overnight, but it could also make them the biggest threat to the established order that had kept peace for millions of years as dawn began to break over Mars Station. Casting orange light through the laboratory windows, both scientists knew their lives had just changed forever. They held in their hands either humanity's greatest triumph or the key to its destruction. The question was whether they would be brave enough to find out which. Commander Park Jun stood on the bridge of the Soul's Dream and tried not to think about how many things could go wrong in the next few minutes. The ship was humanity's newest and most advanced vessel built specifically to test Dr. Kang Wu's impossible discovery. 3 months had passed since the accident in Laboratory 7, and now 50 brave volunteers were about to find out if humans could really break the laws of physics. The bridge was smaller than the massive warships other species used, but it buzzed with nervous energy. 5 crew members sat at their stations running final checks on systems that had never been tested before. Engineering Officer Kim So was hunched over her console, fine-tuning the magnetic field generators that would hopefully fold space around their ship instead of tearing it apart. So looked up at her commander with sweat beading on her forehead. All systems show green, Commander, but I have to remind you we are flying blind here. The computer models say this should work, but models and reality do not always agree. Jun nodded and activated the ship-wide communication system. Attention, crew. This is your captain. We are about to make history today. If our calculations are correct, we will travel from Earth to Alpha Centauri in less than a second. If our calculations are wrong, well, at least it will be quick. Nervous laughter echoed through the ship, but Jun could hear the determination in his crew's voices. They all knew what this test meant for humanity. If the drive worked, Earth could build a fleet of ships that could explore the galaxy faster than anyone thought possible. If it failed well, there would be nothing left to worry about. The target system was Alpha Centauri chosen because it was close enough to study but far enough away to prove the technology worked. The best quantum drives used by Council species would need 3 full days to make the same journey using massive amounts of exotic matter that cost more than most. Planets produced in a year, Jun looked out at the stars surrounding his ship and wondered if this would be the last time he saw them from this location. "Ready all stations," he called out. "Navigation! Ready!" came the response from Lieutenant Choi Min. "At the helm sensors. Ready," reported Communications Officer Yang Bin. "Engineering ready." So confirmed, her voice tight with concentration. Jun took a deep breath and gave the order that would change everything. "Activate the drive." So's hands flew across her control panel as she initiated the sequence they had practiced hundreds of times in simulation. Massive amounts of energy flowed through the ship's new magnetic field generators, creating patterns that should not exist according to known physics. The bridge lights dimmed as every available bit of power was channeled into the space folding array. Reality began to scream around them. The stars outside the bridge windows started to stretch and bend like someone was pulling on the fabric of space. Itself, colors that had no names painted themselves across the view screen while the ship's hull groaned under stresses it was never designed to handle. The crew felt their stomachs lurch as gravity seemed to forget which way was down. Then everything went quiet. The stars snapped back to their normal positions, but they were different stars. The computer displays lit up with navigation data showing their location, and Jun felt his heart nearly stop. They were in the Alpha Centauri system 4.37 light-years from Earth. The journey had taken exactly 0.8 seconds. The bridge erupted in cheers and celebration, but Jun remained focused on his duties. Priority 1 was making sure his ship and crew had survived the journey. Intact damage report, all stations he ordered, so ran through her engineering diagnostics, all systems nominal. Commander, the spacefold put some stress on the hull, but nothing beyond acceptable limits. The magnetic generators performed exactly as predicted. Navigation confirmed their position, showing they had arrived within a few thousand kilometers of their target location. Communications reported all systems working, and sensors began their scans of the Alpha Centauri system. The crew had just accomplished something that would have taken Council ships days to achieve. But as the initial excitement died down, long-range sensors began picking up something troubling. Throughout the surrounding star systems, Council monitoring stations were going dark. Not destroyed or damaged, but simply shutting down their transmissions. The silence was spreading outward from their position like ripples on a pond. Communications officer Yang Bin reported the strange readings to his commander. "Sir, we are detecting massive communication blackouts in nearby systems. The Council monitoring network appears to be shutting down voluntarily." Jun studied the sensor data with growing concern. The Council maintained thousands of automated monitoring stations throughout the galaxy, keeping watch for dangerous activities, illegal technologies, and potential threats. The fact that they were all suddenly going silent meant someone very powerful had given orders to stop watching, or they were trying to hide the fact that they had been watching all along. The implications were chilling. Jun realized that humanity's test flight had just announced to the entire galaxy that Earth possessed technology beyond anything the Council allowed young species. To have the monitoring stations had recorded their arrival, and now someone was trying to cover up the evidence, so completed her final diagnostics and reported that the ship was ready for the return journey. The space-folding drive had worked perfectly, using less energy than a conventional fusion reactor and showing no signs of wear or damage. They could make the jump back to Earth anytime, but Jun hesitated as he stared at the tactical display. Something about the pattern of the communication. Blackouts bothered him. The silence was too organized, too coordinated for a random system failure. Someone had given specific orders to shut down observation of this region of space. Prepare for return jump. He finally ordered his crew. All stations. Report ready for space fold. Back to Earth. The second jump was even smoother than the first. Reality bent around them with barely a shiver, and suddenly they were back in Earth's solar system. The familiar blue marble of their home world appeared. On the view screen, surrounded by the industrial platforms and defense stations that protected humanity's heart, as soon as they arrived, June ordered an immediate communication burst to Earth Command, reporting their successful test. The data package included full sensor logs, energy consumption readings, and proof that humans could now travel anywhere in the galaxy in seconds rather than years. But even as he sent the report, Jun could not shake the feeling that they had just crossed a line they could never uncross somewhere out in the galaxy. Ancient civilizations were waking up to the fact that the young upstart species called humanity had just gained the power to threaten everything they had built. The Council monitoring stations remained silent, but Jun knew they were watching again. Hidden sensors and cloaked ships were probably already moving to observe Earth's activities. The test of humanity's new drive had been a complete success. It had also painted a target on every human world. In the Galaxy A's, the Soul's Dream docked with Earth's primary space station. Jun looked out at his homeworld one more time. He wondered how long it would remain peaceful now that humanity had proven they could fold space itself. The galaxy was about to become a much more dangerous place, and Earth was no longer hidden among the stars. The age of human expansion was about to begin, whether the rest of the galaxy was ready or not. Elder Vorthak had lived for over 3 million years, and in all that time he had never felt the cold touch of fear until today. The ancient being stood in the crystalline chambers of the High Council on Nexus Prime, studying sensor data that challenged everything his species thought they knew about the universe. The readings showed energy signatures that should not exist. Space being folded through methods that defied every law of physics the Council had spent eons mastering. The emergency session had been called within hours of the human test flight. Representatives from the oldest civilizations in the galaxy had gathered in hushed conferences, their usual dignity replaced by barely contained panic. The Hegemon Empire, the Crystalline Collective, the Void Watchers, and dozens of other ancient powers, all staring at the same impossible Data Vorthak's 4 arms, manipulated the holographic display showing the path of the human vessel. The ship had appeared in the Alpha Centauri system without any of the energy buildup that preceded quantum tunnel jumps, no exotic matter signatures, no dimensional crystal resonance, no gravitational distortions that marked conventional faster-than-light travel. The humans had simply existed in one location, then existed in another. As if the space between had never mattered, Council scientist Zephyra floated beside him, her gaseous form shifting colors as she processed the implications. Her species, the ethereal minds, were the galaxy's greatest theorists, capable of understanding physics that drove other races mad, but even she seemed shaken by what they were witnessing. Elder Vorthak, she said, her voice echoing through harmonics that translated as deep concern. I have run the data through our most advanced computational matrices. The humans are not using any known method of faster-than-light travel. They appear to be manipulating the fundamental structure of space-time itself. Vorthak's ancient eyes studied the energy patterns more closely. His species had mastered quantum tunneling 15 million years ago and had spent the time since then carefully controlling which races gained access to the technology. The Council's entire system of governance was based on technological superiority, keeping younger species dependent on their guidance and trade networks. But the human energy signatures suggested something far more dangerous than improved quantum drives. They were using brute force manipulation of reality itself, bending space, through methods that required no rare materials, no exotic matter, no dimensional crystals. The implications were staggering. If humans could fold space with such primitive technology, they could theoretically travel anywhere in the galaxy instantly. More terrifying still, they could do it using resources available in any star system. The Council's carefully maintained monopoly on faster-than-light travel would crumble. Overnight, Zephyra continued her analysis, pulling up tactical projections that made Vorthak's blood run cold. The power requirements for their space folding appear to be minimal, far lower than our quantum systems. If they can scale this technology up, they could move entire fleets across the galaxy without warning. Azua. Chamber filled with the voices of other council members as the full scope of the threat became clear. The Nexus Collective worried about trade route security. The machine hierarchs calculated military implications. The psionic orders feared the collapse of their carefully maintained mental influence over younger species. But there was something even worse hidden in the sensor data. The humans were not just breaking known laws of physics. They were doing it with technology that could be replicated by any sufficiently advanced civilization. If the secret of space folding spread to other species, the Council's million-year reign would end in chaos. Vorthak accessed historical records searching for any similar technology in the vast archives of galactic history. His search came back empty. Never in recorded time had any species achieved instantaneous travel across interstellar distances. The closest had been the extinct void builders who could create short-range spatial distortions. Before their civilization collapsed under the weight of their own ambitions, the discussion turned to immediate responses. Several council members proposed military action, suggesting they dispatch enforcement fleets to human space before the situation could worsen. But Vorthak knew such measures would be useless against an enemy that could appear anywhere without warning. Traditional fleet movements and blockades meant nothing to beings who could fold space itself. Councillor Thane of the Hegemon Empire rose from his crystal throne, his voice carrying the authority of a species that had conquered entire galactic sectors. "We must act quickly," he declared. "If humans can master this technology completely, they will become unstoppable. The balance of power that has maintained peace for millions of years will collapse." Other voices joined the growing panic. Some suggested immediate diplomatic contact, offering humans junior partnership in the Council in exchange for exclusive access to their drive technology. Others proposed economic sanctions, cutting human space off from galactic trade until they surrendered their dangerous innovations. But Zephyra's continued analysis revealed an even more disturbing truth. The humans seemed unaware of what they had accomplished. Their test flight showed signs of experimental uncertainty, cautious power levels, and careful safety protocols. This was not a military demonstration, but a scientific experiment. That meant the technology was still in development, still being improved, still growing more powerful with each test. The humans were not trying to threaten the Council. They were simply exploring the possibilities of their discovery, but their ignorance made them infinitely more dangerous than any deliberate aggression. Vorthak studied star charts showing the location of human space, a tiny cluster of barely 50 systems on the outer rim of the galaxy. Humanity was so young that most Council species barely knew they existed. Yet these newcomers had achieved something that had eluded civilization for eons. The Elder's decision crystallized with the weight of 3 million years of experience. "We cannot allow this technology to spread," he announced to the assembled Council. "If other species learn to fold space the way humans have, our ability to maintain order will vanish. Every restricted species will demand the same freedom to expand. Every dangerous civilization we have contained will break free." Murmurs of agreement rippled through the chamber, but Vorthak continued his analysis. The humans had crossed a line that could never be uncrossed. They had proven that the Council's most fundamental assumptions about physics and technology were wrong. If beings barely 2 centuries into space travel could achieve instantaneous galactic travel, what other impossible things might they accomplish? The meeting continued for hours as ancient minds grappled with a threat they had never imagined. Outside the crystalline walls of Nexus Prime, the galaxy continued its peaceful rotation, unaware that its oldest inhabitants were facing their first existential crisis in millions of years. Finally, Vorthak made the decision that would change everything. Prepare the fleets, he ordered. All available forces are to mobilize for immediate deployment to human space. We will offer them one chance to surrender their technology voluntarily. If they refuse, we will have no choice but to ensure this threat never spreads beyond their borders. The council session ended with grim determination, replacing panic, but Vorthak remained in the chamber long after the others had left, staring at the sensor data that had changed everything. In all his millions of years of life, he had never encountered a species that developed so far beyond their apparent technological level. Humanity had just announced to the galaxy that they were no longer bound by the rules that governed everyone else. And for the first time in his ancient existence, Elder Vorthak was not sure the council was strong enough to stop them. The news of Commander Park Jun's successful test flight spread through human space faster than any previous communication in history. Within days, every human colony, every research station, every mining outpost had received the incredible data. The impossible had become possible, and humanity was about to change forever. Engineer Choi Min stood in the massive shipyards orbiting Earth, staring at the construction of humanity's first space-folding fleet. 6 months had passed since the Soul's dream proved that humans could break the laws of physics, and now Min was turning that breakthrough into the foundation of a new age. The shipyard buzzed with activity as thousands of workers assembled vessels unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. The new ships were smaller than traditional interstellar vessels because they did not need massive fuel tanks or exotic matter storage. The space-folding drive required only magnetic field generators and fusion reactors. Both technologies humanity had mastered decades ago. What would have taken other species centuries to build, humans could construct in months. Min watched as the first production model ship took shape on the assembly line. The vessel was elegant in its simplicity, a sleek hull surrounding the revolutionary drive system that would let it appear anywhere in the galaxy instantly. No longer would human expansion be limited by the slow crawl of conventional rockets or the expensive quantum drives that only the richest species could afford. Admiral Yang Bin commanded the planning for humanity's most ambitious expansion in history. His strategy room on Luna Base buzzed with excitement as military planners and civilian administrators worked together to map out dozens of simultaneous colonization efforts. Unlike other species that took decades to establish new colonies, humans could now transport entire cities' worth of materials and people instantly across the galaxy. The first wave of expansion targeted uninhabited systems within 100 light-years of Earth systems that would have taken conventional ships years to reach could now be surveyed and colonized in weeks. Captain Moon Jae led the exploration fleets, jumping from star to star with crews of scientists and engineers ready to establish permanent human presence wherever they found suitable worlds. Each jump revealed new wonders that other species had never seen because they were too far from established trade routes or too expensive to reach with conventional drives. Humans discovered gas giants with floating crystal formations that could be harvested for advanced technology, rocky worlds with vast deposits of rare metals that could fuel further expansion, ocean planets teeming with life, forms that had evolved in complete isolation. The speed of human expansion shocked even Earth's leaders. Within 3 months of beginning the colonization program, humanity had established permanent settlements in 40 new star systems. Each colony was connected to Earth through instantaneous communication and transportation links that made the growing human empire more unified than any previous interstellar civilization. But humans were not content with empty systems. Long-range scouts began. Probing deeper into the Galaxy Mapping Council territory and discovering the true scope of the galactic community, Captain Li Dong commanded the scout ship Busan Explorer on missions that revealed just how vast and ancient the established civilizations really were. During one jump near the border of Vorthak space, Dong's sensors detected massive orbital installations surrounding entire star systems, industrial platforms that had been under construction for millions of years, trade networks spanning, thousands of light-years military bases that could support fleets larger than humanity's entire space navy. The scouts reported their findings back to Earth, and Admiral Yang realized humanity had been living in a tiny bubble at the edge of a galaxy, filled with ancient empires. But the space-folding drive changed everything. Human ships could appear anywhere without warning, bypass all defenses, and disappear before retaliation was possible. Dr. Han Sol led scientific expeditions that pushed the boundaries of human knowledge even further. Her research ship, the Incheon Discovery, could visit dozens of star systems in a single day, studying stellar phenomena that would have taken other species lifetimes to observe. She discovered that space, folding worked differently near different types of stars, opening up possibilities for even more advanced applications of the technology. The implications were staggering. Humanity could establish research stations near black holes, study the cores of distant galaxies, and explore regions of space that no other species had ever reached. The drive technology that had started as an accident in a Mars laboratory was revealing secrets of the universe that had been hidden since the beginning of time. Back on Earth, President Kim Ara watched the expansion reports with growing amazement and concern. Humanity was spreading across the galaxy faster than anyone had thought possible, but they were also attracting attention from the ancient powers that ruled. Known space intelligence reports suggested that Council monitoring stations were tracking human movements, and massive alien fleets were beginning to mobilize. The human colonies were thriving beyond all expectations. New Shanghai in the Ross system had grown from a temporary outpost to a major industrial center in just 4 months. Neo Sol near Vega was becoming a hub for scientific research, while the mining colonies in the Centauri region were extracting resources faster than Earth could process them. But the rapid expansion was also creating problems. Human space now covered over 200 star systems, but most were barely defended. The space-folding drive gave humans incredible mobility, but they still needed time to build up industrial capacity and military forces in their new territories. Captain Moon Jae submitted reports that worried military planners. His exploration fleets were encountering signs of ancient civilizations everywhere they looked. Derelict space stations that were millions of years old, artificial structures on a scale that dwarfed anything humans had ever built, evidence of wars and conflicts that had shaped the galaxy long before Earth's sun had formed. The galaxy was not empty space, waiting for human expansion. It was already claimed by powers so old and vast that humanity barely registered on their awareness. But that was changing quickly. Every human ship that appeared in a new system announced that the young species from Earth was no longer content to stay in their corner of space. Admiral Yang Bin received intelligence reports that made him realize just how dangerous the situation had become. Council enforcement fleets were mobilizing throughout the galaxy. Ancient warships that had not moved in thousands of years were powering up weapons systems. Diplomatic channels were buzzing with communications about the human threat. The expansion program had achieved everything its planners had hoped for and more. Humanity now controlled territory spanning hundreds of light years, had access to resources beyond their wildest dreams, and possessed the technological capability to explore the entire galaxy. But they had also announced to every major power in known space that Earth was no longer a minor species that could be ignored. President Kim Ara called an emergency session of the Human Space Council as reports arrived of massive alien fleets gathering near human territory. The expansion had been a complete success, but it had also painted a target on every human world in the galaxy. The age of peaceful growth was ending, and the age of galactic politics was about to begin. Whether humanity was ready or not, they were no longer alone among the stars. Ambassador Quan Yu had spent 5 years preparing for this moment, studying galactic languages, learning diplomatic protocols, and imagining the day humanity would take its place among the great civilizations of the galaxy. She had expected celebration, perhaps a grand ceremony welcoming Earth's representatives to the Galactic Council. Instead, she found herself staring at the largest fleet of warships she had ever seen, blocking access to human space. The Council fleet stretched across the void, like a metal constellation. Thousands of vessels from dozens of different species formed a blockade that encompassed the entire outer boundary of human territory. Ships that were older than human civilization itself floated in perfect formation. Their weapons-powered and targeting systems, Active Fleet Admiral Baek Ho commanded humanity's response from the bridge of the battleship New Korea. His fleet was smaller than the Council Armada, but every human ship was equipped with the space-folding drive that had changed everything. The ability to appear anywhere without warning gave his forces advantages that traditional military thinking could not account for. The Council's ultimatum had arrived 3 days ago, delivered by Admiral Thane of the ancient Hegemon Empire. The message was simple and terrifying. Humanity would surrender all space-folding technology, immediately submit to complete technological oversight by Council authorities, and accept permanent restrictions on their expansion or face the combined military might of 1,000 worlds. You stood on the command deck of her diplomatic vessel, trying to process the implications. The Council species she had studied and admired for years, the civilizations she had hoped to join as equals, were now threatening to destroy every human world in the galaxy. The dream of peaceful first contact had become a nightmare of interstellar politics and ancient fears. Admiral Thane's massive flagship dominated the center of the Council formation. The vessel was over 20 kilometers long, a monument to the military power of species that had conquered entire galactic sectors. His communication to Admiral Baek carried barely concealed terror despite its threatening words, young. Admiral Thane's message began his voice translated through systems that had been facilitating galactic diplomacy for millions of years. Your species has developed technology that threatens the stability of civilized space. The Council cannot allow such dangerous innovations to spread. We offer you this one opportunity to surrender voluntarily. But you could hear something else in the alien commander's words, something that sounded almost like panic. The ancient species that ruled the galaxy were afraid, actually afraid of what humanity had accomplished. Their ultimatum was not the confident demand of superior beings, but the desperate reaction of powers that had realized their dominance was no longer absolute. The standoff continued. For days, with neither side willing to back down, Council ships maintained their blockade positions while human vessels used their space-folding capability to appear throughout the region. The psychological effect was profound. Human ships could be anywhere at any time while Council forces were locked into predictable orbital patterns. You attempted diplomatic contact, offering to negotiate directly with Council leadership. She proposed technology-sharing agreements, joint exploration programs, and equal partnership in galactic governance. But the alien leaders refused every overture. Their response was always the same: complete surrender or total war. During one tense exchange, Admiral Thane revealed the true source of Council fears. Your drive technology makes mockery of every restriction we have placed on dangerous species, he transmitted. If others learn what you have accomplished, every contained threat, every restricted civilization will demand the same freedom. The order we have, maintained for millions of years, will collapse. You finally understood why first contact had gone so wrong. The Council did not see humanity as a potential new member, but as an existential threat to their entire system of governance. For eons, they had maintained peace by controlling technology, keeping younger species dependent on their guidance and trade. But humans had broken that system by achieving something the Council had never imagined possible. The negotiation attempts revealed other, disturbing truths about galactic civilization. The Council had been suppressing technological development across known space, ensuring that no species could challenge their authority. Entire civilizations had been kept in technological stasis, prevented from reaching their full potential because their innovations might threaten established powers. Meanwhile, Captain Li Dong and his scout ships continued their reconnaissance missions deep in Council territory. What they discovered changed everything. Massive fleets were mobilizing throughout the galaxy. Ancient warships that had not moved in millennia were powering up their systems. Species that had been allies for millions of years were coordinating military responses on a scale never before. The Council was not just preparing for war against humanity, they were preparing for total war that would reshape the entire galaxy. The ancient powers had realized that the space-folding drive represented more than just a new technology. It was proof that their assumptions about physics advancement and control were fundamentally wrong. Admiral Bayek received intelligence reports that made his blood run cold. The mobilization included species humanity had never heard of: ancient machine, civilizations that could convert entire star systems into weapons, energy beings that existed in dimensions humans could barely comprehend, hive minds that controlled millions of worlds with perfect coordination. But the most terrifying discovery was that the Council forces gathering against humanity included species that had been extinct for millions of years, civilizations that had transcended physical existence but could still project military power across the galaxy when faced with threats to the established order. You made one final attempt at diplomatic resolution, broadcasting directly to the Council homeworlds and offering complete transparency about human space-folding research. She proposed joint oversight committees shared, development programs, and gradual technology transfer that would benefit all species. But her messages were met with silence. The Council had made its decision. Humanity represented a threat that could not be negotiated with, contained, or controlled. The only acceptable outcome was complete surrender or total destruction. There would be no middle ground. No compromise, no peaceful resolution to the crisis. As the standoff entered its third week, scout reports brought news that changed the strategic situation. Completely Council fleets throughout the galaxy were not just mobilizing, they were moving. Every major civilization was committing forces to the campaign against humanity. The ancient powers had decided that the threat to their established order was so great that they would risk everything to eliminate it. Admiral Bayek realized that traditional military thinking would not save humanity. The Council had superior numbers, better weapons, and millions of years of combat experience. But they also had weaknesses that the space-folding drive could exploit. Their fleets were designed for conventional warfare, their strategies based on predictable movement patterns, their communications networks vulnerable to disruption. The final diplomatic exchange between you and Admiral Thane revealed the true scope of what was at stake. "This is not about your species alone," Thane transmitted. "Your technology proves that everything we thought we knew about physics and advancement is wrong. If we allow you to keep it, every species in the galaxy will demand the same freedoms. The civilization we have built over millions of years will crumble." You transmitted her final response, knowing that her words would determine whether humanity survived or joined the extinct civilizations that littered galactic history. Then perhaps she said, "It is time for your civilization to evolve." The silence that followed her transmission was broken only by the activation of weapon systems throughout both fleets. First, contact between humanity and the Galactic Council was about to become the opening battle of a war that would determine the fate of every thinking being in the galaxy. The final confrontation between humanity and the Galactic Council came not through the massive space battle that both sides had prepared for, but through a demonstration that changed the nature of power in the galaxy forever: President Kim Ara. stood in the Situation Room beneath Seoul watching real-time displays that showed human ships materializing simultaneously around every major world in Council space. It had taken 3 weeks of careful planning and unprecedented coordination. Captain Moon Jae commanded the largest space-folding operation in human history. Over 2,000 ships appearing at the same instant in locations spanning the entire galaxy. Not to attack, not to invade, but simply to prove that humanity could reach anywhere. They chose regardless of defenses, distances, or warnings. The message that Kim Ara broadcast to the galaxy was simple and direct from every human ship orbiting every Council homeworld. At the same moment, humanity wanted peace, but they would not be caged. The ancient powers could either accept humans as equals and allow all species the freedom to develop their full potential, or they could watch their million-year empire crumble as every suppressed civilization in the galaxy demanded the same liberation. In the crystalline chambers of the High Council on Nexus Prime, Elder Vorthak stared at tactical displays that showed the impossible human ships had appeared in orbit around the Vorthak homeworld, around the hegemon capital, around the machine worlds of the collective, around every seat of power that had ruled the galaxy since before Earth's sun had formed. The demonstration was perfect in its restraint. The human ships made no aggressive moves, fired no weapons, issued no demands. They simply existed in places where they should not be able to reach, announcing to the universe that the old rules no longer applied. The Council's most powerful worlds were defenseless against an enemy that could appear anywhere without warning. Counselor Thane transmitted from his flagship, still blockading human space, but now revealed as completely pointless. "This is impossible," he said, his voice carrying centuries of disbelief. "Your ships cannot be in all these locations simultaneously. The energy requirements alone should make such coordination impossible." But the sensor readings were undeniable. Human vessels surrounded every major Council installation, their space-folding drives creating energy signatures that defied every law of physics. The ancient civilizations had spent eons mastering. The blockade of human space had become irrelevant when humans could simply appear behind any defensive line the Council could establish. Elder Vorthak felt something he had not experienced in 3 million years of existence: complete helplessness. The Vorthak Empire controlled thousands of star systems, had weapons that could destroy entire worlds, and commanded fleets that had conquered galactic sectors. But none of that mattered against an enemy that could be everywhere at once. The human demonstration revealed the true scope of what humanity had achieved. They were not just folding space around individual ships, but coordinating simultaneous operations across galactic distances. The implications were staggering. If humans could synchronize their movements perfectly across the entire galaxy, they had achieved a level of technological integration that surpassed anything in Council history, Dr. Han Sol broadcast from her research. Ship now orbiting the ancient archive worlds where galactic history was stored. "Fellow beings," she transmitted, "we offer you knowledge that your Council has kept hidden. The space-folding technology is not magic or impossible science. It is simply physics that your leaders chose not to explore because it threatened their control." Her transmission included complete technical specifications for space-folding drives, along with historical data, showing how Council restrictions had prevented other species from making similar discoveries. Humanity was not offering trade or negotiation. They were giving away the secret that could free every suppressed civilization in the galaxy. The reaction was immediate across Council space. Species that had been kept in technological stasis for millions of years began demanding access to the same freedoms humanity had claimed. The carefully maintained balance that kept ancient powers in control started cracking as younger civilizations realized how much they had been denied. On the machine world of synthesis, artificial intelligences that had been restricted to basic computational tasks suddenly had access to technologies that could let them expand across the galaxy. The hive minds of the swarm. Worlds discovered that their collective consciousness could be enhanced beyond anything the Council had allowed. The energy beings of the void realms found that space folding could let them exist in dimensions previously forbidden. President Kim. Ara watched the cascade of liberation spreading across the galaxy and felt the weight of history changing. Humanity had not conquered the ancient powers they had made conquest irrelevant, when every species could travel instantly across the galaxy. When technological advancement was no longer controlled by ancient restrictions, the very concept of galactic empire became meaningless. Elder Vorthak accessed communication channels that had not been used in millions of years, speaking directly to species his people had controlled since their civilizations began. Young humans, he transmitted his voice carrying the authority of eons. You have done something that no species in galactic history has ever accomplished. You have made the gods of space feel powerless. The admission sent shockwaves through council chambers across the galaxy. The Vorthak Empire had been the ultimate authority in known space older than most stars, more advanced than the dreams of lesser civilizations. But they had just acknowledged that a species barely 2 centuries into space travel had fundamentally changed the rules of existence. Admiral Baek Ho received reports from human ships throughout the galaxy. Council fleets were standing down throughout. Known space-ancient warships that had mobilized for total war were powering down their weapons and returning to their home systems. The threat of galactic war had ended not through victory or defeat, but through the realization that war itself had become pointless. The final transmission came from the council chamber itself, where representatives of the oldest civilizations in the galaxy sat in stunned silence. Elder Vorthak spoke for all of them when he addressed humanity directly. You have achieved something beyond our understanding. He said, you possessed the power to destroy us utterly, but chose restraint. You could have conquered the galaxy, but instead offered liberation to those we had suppressed. The ancient being paused as, if struggling with concepts that challenged millions of years of experience. For the first time in recorded galactic history, he continued, a younger species has proven themselves superior, not through aggression, but through wisdom, not through conquest, but through compassion. The transformation of galactic civilization began immediately. Species that had been locked in technological stasis for eons suddenly had access to space-folding drives. Trade routes that had taken months to traverse could now be completed in seconds. Communication across the galaxy became instantaneous as every world gained the ability to reach every other world without delay on Earth. President Kim Ara addressed her species with the knowledge that humanity had just become the most influential civilization in galactic history. But the victory felt strange because it had required no battle, no conquest, no domination. They had simply proven that the universe was larger and more wonderful than anyone had imagined. The Council of Ancient Species continued to exist, but their role changed from rulers to advisors, from controllers to guides. The million-year empire had not fallen. It had evolved into something unprecedented in galactic history, a truly free association of civilizations where every species could reach their full potential without artificial restrictions in the depths of space. Former council monitoring stations began broadcasting on frequencies that had been silent for eons. The galaxy was waking up to possibilities that had been suppressed since civilization began. And at the center of it all, humanity watched in amazement as their accidental discovery transformed not just their own future, but the destiny of every thinking being among the stars. The age of ancient empires was over. The age of universal freedom had begun. And somewhere in a small laboratory orbiting Mars, Dr. Kang Wu smiled as he realized his failed fusion experiment had become the key that unlocked the galaxy for everyone.